So let's see what we've got here. So we are over at the metadata. We are looking at the Meta Monday website. If you don't know about this website, this is put together by JCMS, who puts together the weekly metadata and collates all the information from things like Tourney Keeper and BCP and all that kind of stuff. And he looks at GTs and above, so either GTs, majors, and super majors, but it doesn't take into account RTTs. The number of players that we had this weekend was 768. So that's an average weekend. A quiet weekend tends to be sub 500. A busy weekend tends to be greater than 800. So 768 is actually pretty good. Like it's at the top end of a normal weekend. Now there were 14 events this weekend of varying sizes. Some were kind of small, but one was a major. Might even be like a super major. It had like well over 100 people at it. And there were a total of 4,062 games played. So a lot of games of Warhammer were played. In terms of these columns, what they mean, so you've got weekend win rate, average win rate over the last few weeks. This is the number of the players that went, and this is per faction as well when we get into it. Number of players that went what we call X and 1 or X and O, where basically they either lost only one game or they lost no games whatsoever. So X and 1, X and O. The reason why I say X and 1 is because sometimes that'll be 4 and 1, sometimes that'll be like 5 and 1, sometimes that'll be like 7 and 1 or 8 and 0, depending on how big the event was. This is the number of tournaments. This is the number of players. This is the number of victories, and this is the number of games played. Coming in bottom place, we have got the Orcs. No! Oh, the Orcs cannot catch a break. About a month and a half ago, they were top dogs. They were top dogs. They were a good faction with a couple of with one broken detachment and a couple of like good detachments. And then GW just came in, and it outside of like Eldar, it's the heaviest nerfing that I've seen in a long time. And Eldar didn't get nerfed heavily in one go. They got nerfed incrementally, and GW just completely massacred the Orcs in the last balanced data slate. And ever since they did that, the Orc data that we've seen has just plummeted, and they're now at the bottom of the table. And you know what? I don't expect Orcs to climb out of bottom 5 anytime soon. Everything viable got taken away from them. Green Tide, completely fucked. Considering Green Tide wasn't broken, considering Green Tide was like World Eaters, it had some unbelievably hard counters. Yeah, sometimes Green Tide would just roll over people, but then Green Tide would just run into any army that had fights first and would just flatten itself against it. Just absolutely die. So, yeah, Orcs got hugely overnerfed. And what we see now is basically the death of the faction, where player numbers are dwindling. The fact that a month and a half ago Orcs were the most played faction, now, I mean, they've got as many people playing as many people playing Orcs as Chaos Knights. Put that into perspective for a moment. There are more people playing Chaos Knights. There are as many people playing Chaos Knights as there are Orcs, or nearest damn it. That is insane, considering like the pedigree that Orcs have got. And how popular they were. That shouldn't be the case. So Orcs been overnerfed. Their player numbers have absolutely crashed through the floor. Their win rate is 34%, one of the lowest win rates we have seen in 10th edition. Frankly, this is reminiscent of early Death Guard. This is reminiscent of early Votan, which literally were unplayably bad. GW fucked up. It doesn't matter where you look. Quarter speed, it had one guy who played it, and he managed to win 3 games out of like 7. That's nothing to write home about. Don't get me wrong. Winning 3 out of 7 games is still a big deal, but it's not enough. One guy is what I'm saying here. It's one guy. That's not enough. That's not enough of a sample size. Dreadmob, struggling to land. I mean, people keep trying Dreadmob week in, week out, but no, it's just not working. Bully Boys has gone off a cliff. 5 players, 31%. Green Tide, 2 players, 30%. I remember when there were, every week we were seeing double digits of Green Tide players. Not anymore. And it looks like the vast majority of Orc players, I mean, how depressing is this? The vast majority of Orc players have gone back to Warhorde, which was the index attachment. So GW has released an Orc codex, and they may as well have not fucking bothered, because no one's using anything but Warhorde. Warhorde, over half the players, Warhorde had more people playing it than all the other detachments combined. No one's taken the Great Hunt. Yeah. What? No one's taking the Great Hunt. Barely anyone's taking Cut of Speed. Barely anyone's taking Green Tide, except for the most hardcore. Bully Boys and Dread Mobs just completely dried up. And basically everyone's just gone back to playing the index in a vain attempt to try and squeeze something out, and it's just not working. Orcs are now DOA. GW, you fucked up. You need to fix that. There's no other way of putting it. You overcorrected way too hard. And this guy's right here. This right here is why you don't preemptively nerf stuff. Remember, a lot of the nerfs that we saw were preemptive. They were nerfs that came out before Pariah Nexus dropped. So we had the Pariah Nexus information, but we didn't have the Pariah Nexus data. The GW balance team decided to preemptively nerf stuff without doing it based on solid evidence, and this is the result. Overcorrection and factions which are rotting away. Literally rotten carcasses of factions. Bad shit, man. Speaking of dead factions, Deathwatch. Is there really anything to say about Deathwatch at this point? I suppose it's somewhat interesting that one guy decided to try and take Ironstorm and 2 guys tried to take Gladius, and they actually had some pretty good results on Gladius. Maybe something to be aware of, like someone actually went 4-1 with Deathwatch Gladius. Something to be aware of, maybe. That's like a little nugget of information. But considering that less than 1% of people, like 0.8% of people, roughly off the top of my head, took Deathwatch, there were only 6 players. It's incredibly hard to see this as anything but a dead faction. I think pretty much Deathwatch players now are waiting, hoping, and praying that they are able to run a pure Deathwatch army in the Codex Agents of Imperium, and they are hoping, waiting, and praying that there is a detachment there that lets them run their whole army, and that they're not getting squatted. I would be so ashamed of GW if they squatted Deathwatch. You can't squat factions when you literally brought back squats, GW. Put the effort in and fix them. Deathwatch are a super cool army. If you make them fun, interesting, and good, people will pick them, people will play them. GW, if this faction dies, it's because you wanted it to die. And honestly, I have no idea why you would want that. That's completely fucked up. The last of the bottom 3 is Chaos Knights. Chaos Knights are a bit of a weird one this week. As you can see, they've only got a 40% win rate. It's well below their average of 46%. But their player numbers are really high. Like, for a relatively niche faction, Chaos Knight, basically it's Codex War Dogs, right? 25 people decided that spamming War Dogs would be fun this weekend. And one guy even won an event. Like, let's have a look. What the fuck did he win? 64 player event where he went 4 wins and 1 draw and managed to win on the point differential. So winning a 64 player event with Chaos Knights is significant. I think Chaos Knights are basically in that sort of area now where it is possible to win some events with them, but it only pops up now and again. And for most people, I think most people are finding there's so much anti-tank out there right now that taking Chaos Knights can be very, very tricky. You need to have a good run and be a very skilled player to go anything better than 2 and 3, 3 and 2. Let's quickly push ourselves to the bottom 5. and then we'll catch up on some super chats and stuff. G-Silical, GSC, my boys! Now, you guys know I love a good GSC army, and they've actually had some pretty good results this weekend. 12 players is low. That's again, gentlemen, let's put something in perspective here. This is a faction which has got a codex, like Orcs. This is the faction which has a codex. It's the second codex faction, which recent codex faction, which is now in the bottom 5. 12 players is a very, very low number of players. But they had they have a 4% win rate, which isn't great. But they actually had 3 people that went 4-1. I guess these 3 people were able to roll 5-ups for 4 games, but the luck just ran out game 5. But Host of Ascension seems to be getting some good results this weekend. 60% win rate, above an average of 42%. However, and with 2 people going 4-1. Which is 2 out of 3 people actually doing really well with it. But bear in mind that 2 people went 4-1, and then the 3rd guy won 1 game. So you had 2 people going 4-1 and 1 guy going 1-4. That is the sort of vagaries you get with such a small sample size. And it's kind of... That's so Gene Stealer, right? They just didn't roll... That last guy wasn't rolling 5-ups. Personally, I've said it once, I'll say it again. GSC need to be completely rewritten. The idea that you get free units back, so all of your units are massively like inflated in terms of points, then you're not guaranteed to get those units back, is such a shit idea. Like, honestly, free units in general are just such a shit idea, and I'm saying that as someone who used to, you know, spam reinforce like a motherfucker. GSC, the way GW has been fucking around with cut ambush since day 1. The way they fix it is they literally say cut ambush, every unit in the army gets deep strike. Vehicles, just every unit in the army gets deep strike. If you want to make it so it's not broken, you can't have people disembark from a vehicle after it's deep striked, whatever, so people can't deep strike down, get up 3 and have easy charges. Just say everyone gets deep strike and just cut the points by 20%. Just everything is ambushing you. If you know, everything is coming at you, and it's all super cheap, but it's super fragile. So if you basically you just burn through it in 3 turns. But I put Cut Ambush has had like 4 or 5 different versions in 10th edition. Yeah, it's mad. GW, just admit you were wrong. It's a shit mechanic. Sort it out. Outlander Claw continuing to get good results. We see this one perform fairly well each weekend, but again, with such small sample size, it's hard to draw anything. A couple of shit ones here. Biosonic Brew Surge being the most popular attachment, but the one with the worst win rate is kind of interesting. The sad thing here, though, no Brew Brothers. No Brew Brothers, no! I think I need to take Brew Brothers to a tournament, just to prove that I think it actually does have some play. I think I need to do it, boys. I actually really enjoyed running Brew Brothers. I actually really enjoyed using Brew Brothers in that one battle port, and I look forward to using it again at a tournament. I've got ways and means, boys. Ways and means of making it work. Swords and Smith. The 9th edition GSC Blitz deploying was cool. Yeah. 8th edition Blips and 9th edition Blips were cool. I think 8th edition was my favorite. When GSC dropped in 8th edition, that was my favorite time. Alright. Last faction in the bottom 5 is Space Marines. Now, there's nothing really new to write about Space Marines. They've basically stabilized. So 41% win rate is in line with their average of 40%. They did actually win a tournament this week, which is kind of interesting. And they've maintained having decent player numbers. The thing with Space Marines is that if you're going to run Space Marines, you might as well run, like, Dark Angels. So you see a lot of people that are running basic Space Marines are running not as powerful as they could. So yeah, Space Marines are in that weird point where basically they're almost like the cream of the crop is getting skimmed off each week, because the cream is going to basically Space Marine +1, which is Dark Angels and Space Wolves, stuff like that. Now, Gladius did okay this weekend with a 46% win rate, but had lots of people playing it. Vanguard struggled this week. Firestorm really struggled this week. Ironstorm Spearhead won a tournament. He can't keep getting away with it. I mean, Some brave, beautiful bastard was like, I don't accept yo nerfs, and literally went and won a tournament with Ironstorm Spearhead despite the odds. I mean, that just scares me because I thought we were over having to deal with Ironstorm, but apparently not. What did he fucking win, man? There you go. He won a 30-player, 5-round GT, so a nice local sort of regular-sized GT, man. As far as I'm concerned, that is pretty impressive, though, and goes to show that sometimes you just go unrelenting, pure bastard firepower. Super Cube 3000s put it very succinctly. Basic Space Marines are just like fat-free milk. Exactly. What's the point? It's just milk. It's just water that is pretending to be milk. So that covers the bottom 5. So we've got Orcs, Deathwatch, Chaos Knights, GSC, and Space Marines. I have to say, none of the factions in that bottom 5 really surprised me. It just, and it just saddens me seeing factions. It just saddens me seeing like so many dead factions. Like GSC are a dead faction, Deathwatch dead faction, Orcs are a dead faction. Like, it just saddens me that we're this far into 10th and we're getting so many dead factions. I rarely say this, guys, but I hope we don't get a codex, frankly, because right now it's like it feels for a lot of factions like if you get a codex, you get nerfed. And I like the guard index, and yeah, they keep fucking with it, but I can't help but feel like it's been happening for a while now, where Codex is the curse of the Codex, exactly, no name. Curse of the Codex, man. What is a little surprising is seeing Chaos Space Marines coming in the bottom 6th place. Chaos Space Marines really are a faction that does have the potential to drive the meta. And they're an incredibly powerful faction, and they've just had, like, it's important to put things in perspective, like 42% win rate. You know, some factions, like fucking Orcs, they kill a motherfucker to get a 42% win rate. Like, 42% against an average of 46% is fine. It's not great. It's not great, but it's not terrible. It's like a slightly low week versus a faction that on average is in the Goldilocks zone. And if you look at the Chaos Space Marines, you can see that they have a lot of potential here. They've got 42 players, making them a very, very popular faction here. One of the most played factions. They had 5 people that were able to go 4-1. Now, admittedly, no one was able to go win a tournament this weekend. But Chaos Space Marines, you know, they don't win a tournament every weekend, but like a month doesn't go by where they don't win something. They don't win something. So they've got a lot of potential. And the thing with Chaos Space is they've got so many different detachments. They've got more detachments than anyone else, and that can really, really drag the win rate down. So if you look at Renegade Raiders, which makes them about half of the players, just under half the people playing Chaos Space Marines, they're actually in the Goldilocks zone. They're almost perfect. They're almost perfectly balanced. 49% win rate this week versus an average of 49%. They had 19 players, I should say, and about 20% of those players was able to go 4-1. That's right in the fucking pocket. That's like mwah, chef's kiss, that data right there. Good player numbers, really good showing, like people, you know, a good proportion be able to get those results in there, and overall people coming out 50% win rate. That's great. But then a lot of this is brought down by the, for lack of a better term, shite. So Fellhammer Siege Host. Now, yeah, proportionally, there's only 3 people in here, so it's not going to pull the win rate down like massively, but it still had a 23% win rate. So that's going to bring this down by like a couple of percentage points. And then Dread Talons. Again, only 2 people, but a 25% win rate. That's going to pull it down a little bit more. Pat-bound Zealots, which had a really bad week. Normally a solid detachment. Seems like a few people jumped on it. It unfortunately didn't work for them. They didn't get the run or the match that they needed, and only had a 33% win rate. So that's like a quarter of the players roughly only getting 33%. That's going to bring it down. So Chaos Space Marines in general are fine. It's in the specific where there are problems. And the problem with Chaos Space Marines is that they have all of these amazingly flavorful detachments, but really there's only one. And so I would say that Chaos Space Marines, they're not a bottom 6 faction. They're in the pocket, they're in the Goldilocks zone. It's just they only have one detachment which can reliably deliver those results. And other ones pop up in there, like Veteran of the Long War, somehow someone went 4-1 with it. Amazing. Chaos Cult, one guy took it, kind of got filled in. Normally it's very good. Like Deceptors had a great weekend. Turns out Alpha Legion, looks like Alpha Legion have turned this franchise around. But basically, long story short, when you want to look at the true competitive Chaos Space Marine win rate, you want to be looking at Renegade Raiders. Everything else is basically like the fluff. And the fluff is artificially suppressing the crunch. So Chaos Space Marines players, don't feel bad for being down here. You've got a really, really broad community with all sorts of types of people jumping on the faction. It's a ton of fun. A lot of people are jumping on because they can see the chaos is in ascendancy. That's going to bring your win rate down as well. But people are just trying interesting things out, and that's going to affect your win rate. But at your core, you have some power, and you have proven that week in, week out with lots of 4-1s, and every month you win a tournament. So there you go. A faction which cannot claim to have the same sort of level of core, the same level of ruggedness, unfortunately and somewhat ironically, is the Adeptus Custodes. No! So the Custodes are suffering. They are suffering at the moment. 42% win rate is a significant drop from 47%. And the problem is that Custodes are kind of tumbling down. Like Al Coffin, our resident Custodes ambassador, really spoke to this. Like week in, week out, the Custodes win rate goes lower and lower and lower. And the player numbers proportionally each week go lower and lower and lower. And the problem is that Custodes, just unless the tables are unfathomably dense, you're just not seeing them get the success. And the problem is that they're durable, but they're not that durable. Like there's plenty of damage 3 out there these days, and most factions have the ability to kick you down to that 4 up. And it's like, well, if you're paying 50 points on a 50-50, your model dies. You're not going to be very happy. Now, Custodes still, it's very important not to underestimate them. If you underestimate them, they will fill you in. They will bend you over. And depending on what Custodes it is, they'll either bum you or they'll peg you. It's whichever one, right? But the point is that Custodes, don't underestimate them. But people that have been playing into them for a while now, they've kind of worked out how to beat them. And so if you have experience in the Custodes, you kind of learn how to beat them, and that's what we're seeing here. We're getting a maturing meta. Despite all the changes, we're getting a maturing meta, and Custodes are struggling to hold that gate. They're struggling to hold that gate because and Knights are now becoming the true gatekeeper again. Mad Larkin, Bulgrin and better Custodes changed my mind. I won't. Another faction seeing a bit of a bad week here, and definitely a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one, is Tau. A strange fickle beast at the moment. 42% win rate is a little lower than the 46%. Only one person going 4-1 out of 42 people. So literally 41 people went 3-2 or worse. That's pretty mad. Now, the cool thing about Tau is that they pretty much have their players evenly split across all of the detachments. So normally what we find with a codex is a codex will come out, it'll have one good detachment, and then it'll have like 3 to 5 shitty yet flavorful detachments. And what Tau has done has actually managed to do the impossible. It's never been done before. It's got 3 viable detachments. Now, what's interesting here is which attachments are pulling down the results. So, Retaliation Cadre, when I saw Retaliation Cadre, often I will say on these streams, send me to the black ships, I'm a psyker, I can predict everything. I'm going to hold my hands up. Don't send me to the black ships, guys. I predicted that Tau would start winning. But I got it partially right, but I didn't read the runes 100%. When I first saw Tau, I thought Retaliation Cadre was a joke. I thought it was far too risky for the rewards that you would get. But it turns out that over the last 2-3 months, I cannot deny the data. I cannot deny what is in front of my face right now. Tau, week in, week out, the Retaliation Cadre has been very, very strongly performing. And sometimes it dips down a bit, but holy shit, like, I don't think you can deny it. It's on the up and up. Retaliation Cadre coming in with a 49% win rate this week against an average of 46%, so it's heading in the right direction, and it is the most popular. So it seems that almost nothing that GW can do will stop Tau players from just crushing the dreams of their fellow players with battlesuits. Because that's what this is. Like, it's another fucking edition of battlesuit spam. Damn your eyes, Tau players. Damn your eyes. You had a chance to do something interesting, and you went, nah, I think I'll just keep crushing people with battlesuits. Damn you to Hades! But it is what it is. And I did say that Tau... Now, I said that Tau needed one viable detachment to start cheesing it. They've got that with Retaliation Cadre. What's interesting is they've got 2 other good detachments as well. Now, Kayun, or Kauyon, 43% versus against an average of 49%. That's a little bit of a dip. Normally it's higher than that. That's just an off week. But 12 players, so good player numbers. And then Monka having an absolute shitter of a week. Completely shitting its guts out, man. 34% win rate versus 46. That has to be just a bad week. It just has to be. But 11 players. Now, what's significant here is 16 players, 12 players, 11 players. That's a really nice spread. I mean, you compare that to like Custodies, where it's like 3, 19, 3, and Chaos Basins, where it's like 19, 4, 2, 1, 2, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's a really good spread. So, this is the funny thing is, this is actually a bit of a secret buff to Tau, because the lists for Retaliation Cadre and the list for Kayun and the list for Monka are completely different. And so it's one of the advantages that Guard often has, where you can play one Guard player at a tournament and he'll be running Triple Dawn, and you'll play the next Guard player at a tournament and he'll be running like 60 Ogrin, and you'll play the next Guard player at a tournament and he'll be running like full mechanized. You can't predict what they're going to bring, and so it makes it difficult to counter if you haven't like got a set up for like these specific playstyles. Tau are kind of experiencing that as well, where we've got like battle suits here, we've got like breaches here. There's all these sorts of different things that they're able to run, and each play list requires its own experience and play style to beat and to play. So yeah, Tau, a down week on average, but there's some rumblings that Retaliation Cadre is starting to achieve supremacy. Then we have AdMech. AdMech doing okay. It's a lot better than it was. So AdMech now having 18 players is phenomenal. Like, that number just keeps generally, it's stagnating a bit, but it's generally going in the right direction. It's going more up than it's going down. So AdMech, okay player numbers, not great, not terrible. Slightly down on the win rate this week with only 43% win rate against an average of 49%. But the big thing with AdMech is it's still Skitarii Hunter cohort. So there's not really much more to write about this. The AdMech community has been trying lots of different things. We've seen like Explorer to mana pools and all sorts of crazy shit. But it seems like the AdMech, by and large, have decided that Skitarii Hunter cohort is still the way to go, and it's still getting good results. So it turns out that when GW fixed AdMech, all they did is basically they fixed everything, but then basically they fixed Skitarii Hunter cohort more. It is kind of mad that months and months and months later, the competitive AdMech community is still using Skitarii Hunter cohort. I imagine that's starting to get a little stale. It'd be good to... Every faction likes to mix things up a little bit. Blood Angels! A surprise to see them this far down, but, they do, combat armies, they do wax and wane from week to week. 46% win rate versus an average of 53% might be a little worrying if it wasn't for the fact that they still had 3 people that are able to pull some good results down. 3 people go 4-1. and they also had really, really healthy player numbers. Blood Angels, there's not much I'm going to say on them now because we know that their codex is coming out soon. We know that their meta is going to evolve. Right now, Blood Angels meta is as many Death Company with power fists and jump packs as they can get their hands on. Now, that is going to change very, very significantly because Death Company will no longer be able to take power fists. So what the meta is right now is going to be completely unrecognizable in comparison to the meta when that codex drops. So Blood Angel players, enjoy your power fists whilst you can, and start working out how the fuck you're going to deal with tanks in combat when your number one source of damage goes the way of the dodo. So it's the Blood Angel meta is the same as it is now, but the future is very uncertain for them. Not uncertain necessarily in like, oh, they're not going to have a future. Uncertain as in, we don't know where they're going to land because we haven't had all the information yet, but it probably isn't going to be Death Company. And that's a hot take because we haven't seen any Death Company rules yet, but in a meta of vehicles, chainsaws ain't going to cut it. Ironically, it's not going to cut it. Dark Angels having a decent week this week. Dark Angels really stabilizing around that Gladius task force. So 47% win rate versus an average of 46% win rate. That is very stable. Like a 1% fluctuation is nothing. 3 people being able to go 4-1, but no one winning any tournaments. That's surprising. I would expect a few more people to go 4-1. But Dark Angel numbers looking so healthy. So it's not that a whole bunch of people are running Dark Angels. It's not that a whole bunch of people are playing Dark Angels. A whole bunch of people are running their regular ass Space Marines as Dark Angels. Red, green, blue, yellow, it doesn't matter. Like, if you run basic Space Marines and you just want to run base Space Marines but better, just run Dark Angels. And that's what most people are doing. And so that's why you're seeing like this brain drain from the regular Marines, and you're seeing these player numbers go up for Dark Angels. More people twig onto that, more people read about that, more people hear about that. But more people will just because if you're already running Space Marines as Gladius, why not just run them as Dark Angels and just have a power boost? So this number here, this, in my opinion, it represents the cream of the crop. It represents the truly competitive vanilla Space Marine players. This is where they've gone to, because you don't need an overly specific army. You need some Terminators and some Predators and some assault intercessors, sometimes with hopefully with jump packs, and some scouts. There's nothing in there that's really like breaking the mold. Pretty much any Space Marine player right now with a half decent collection can pick up a couple of boxes of Terminators or pick up a few Storm Shields and glue them onto his Terminators and say, I'm Deathwing Knights now. And that will just give them that instant power boost. So Dark Angels, it's still Gladius. Look at the Gladius hugely dominating the numbers here, in terms of player numbers, in terms of where the 4-1s are coming from, in terms of where the win rate's coming from. So it's all Gladius, it's all the way. Dark Angels are the competitive vanilla Marines. So NIDS also looking remarkably stable for a faction that has dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. For a faction that has had a win rate look more like a roller coaster. NIDS looking remarkably stable, and there are a few juicy nuggets in here that I think are going to be good to watch. Things to watch. So on the highest level, we've got a 47% win rate against an average of 48% win rate. Very little fluctuation there. That, like Dark Angels, that's right what you want to see. You don't want to be seeing these huge fluctuations. It's right in the stability zone. 8 people going 4-1 or better, X1 or better, and 2 tournaments being won. Great to see NIDS winning tournaments again. Really solid. Let's see what tournaments that they won as well. 23-player tournament in America and a 30-player tournament in the UK. So 2 small to regular-sized GTs. So they're not winning big events, but what NIDS are showing is that they've got a stable win rate. They've got that potential to go 4-1, and you can win your local meta with the bugs, which is for the vast majority of players. The everyman on the street, that's all that we aspire to. We aspire to do well at our club. We aspire one day to win that trophy from our local game store. Just one weekend, right? That's all we really aspire to. We're not the kind of, for the vast majority of people looking at what's going to win Super Majors, that's like an alien world. Those guys are playing a different game. And that's not to dismiss what they're doing. No, that's an aspect of the game. But for the everyman on the street, just having a faction that can actually win a small GT is more important than having a faction that can win a Super Major. Because that's what they're actually probably going to be able to do themselves. So, seeing these results from NIDs should be a huge morale boost to the NID community. Seeing that win rate stabilize in the high 40s, seeing that 4-1 rate climb, seeing that those local tournaments being won, it shows you that's exactly where you want the faction to be. 43 players is really, really good player numbers. The Hive Mind definitely spawning lots of extra little rippers and little players. And then looking at the spread here. Now, Invasion Fleet is still the most popular, but it's not the overwhelmingly dominant detachment that it once was. We've got 17 in Invasion Fleet, 10 in Vanguard, 10 in Synaptic Nexus. Now, send me to the black ships. Send me back there again, because I did say a few weeks ago that Synaptic Nexus, I've been told, was the one to watch, and it won a tournament. It won a tournament. Synaptic Nexus, I don't know why it is good, but I spoke to a very, very, very experienced player who was running Tyranids, running Synaptic Nexus, and just whilst we were just chatting over a pint, whilst we were having a bit of a group, he basically was like, I was like, oh, what were you running your NIDs today as this weekend? And he was like, oh, I'm running Synaptic Nexus. And I went, oh, why? Oh, just because it fucks. Then we got distracted by the other conversation, around the table. So I don't know why it's good, but if good players are telling me it's good, then it's something to watch, and we're starting to see those results come in. Vanguard Onslaught, it had a terrible weekend, bringing down the win rate with a 39% win rate, but that's a bad weekend. It's 48% win rate is the average. That's probably a bunch of inexperienced people jumping on it and not quite knowing the nuance of it. Invasion Fleet having an amazing weekend. And, with the majority of players and the majority of the positive results. One to watch, though, motherfucking Crusher Stampede. This is the second or third week. Where we have seen Crusher Stampede not be totally shit. Now, that's not exactly glowing praise and a ringing endorsement, but it is the second or third week where Crusher Stampede has been good. And if something is good for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, then it's not a blip. It's not an anomaly. There's something going on there. So I don't know why Crusher Stampede is doing well. All I can tell you is for 3 weeks in a row now, it's not been shit. So it is one to watch. Do not underestimate the Crusher Stampede like you once did. You could underestimate it and be justified in doing so. Now it seems like there's some rumblings going on with that one. So we're back into the data, and now we are looking at the Emperor's True Finest, and frankly, the best faction in the game. I mean, this is just scientific. This isn't my opinion, man. It's just scientific. The Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard, the Emperor's True Finest. In his name, perfectly balanced, as all things should be. 48% win rate this weekend, in comparison to a 48% average win rate over several weeks, with 5 players going 4-on-1. That's a significant amount. No one won a tournament, but we won some tournaments last weekend. We don't win every weekend, but we always win every month. We win something every month. And we have 30 players. Guys, that is, when people talk about the Goldilocks zone, that is the motherfucking Goldilocks zone. All right? That is an almost average, that's an almost 50% win rate on average, with our weekend and our average win rate perfectly matching up. with 16% of our players going 4-1, and with us having a really healthy number of players. And those that number of players, that's just like normal for us. That's just like a nice, healthy amount. Not gone up too much, not gone down too much. Little bit, we've just stabilized. This weekend, we've just taken a knee, we're just running out the clock. Now, guard, this is a really, really healthy position for a faction to be in. And Richard Baker saying only 30 players. For us, that's a slow week. Yes and no. I see this as the guard community starting to stabilize a little bit. And maybe I'm being a little bit biased. Or maybe we've got a little bit more knowledge about this about guard. But, or a little bit more eyes on it, I should say. Not knowledge, a little bit more eyes on it. But I see this as stabilizing. The life cycle of the guard meta is very predictable at this point. We blow up, someone wins a tournament, a bunch of people jump on, the win rate fucking tanks, and then it slowly starts going up again as people start getting their wins in, people start getting their reps in, and I think that's what we're seeing right now. We're just seeing a nice core of experienced players. Now, does this mean that it's not going to fluctuate ever again? No, of course not. It's going to be next week. It could be 55% or it could be down to 40%. The guard win rate, it fluctuates. But what I think we're seeing here is like the veteran division, the veteran players who have gone out, done a good win rate, got 4-1, got some fucking victory chicken, and come home. I think guard is in a good place right now, and remember, we have to put this up against the predictions for guard. And the predictions that guard was getting after the balanced data slate was and I'm going to keep saying this because it's very relevant, was we're a 30% win rate faction. That's what the big names were saying. That's what the little names were saying. We're a 30% win rate faction. We had some people who were very salty, who were saying we're a 20% win rate faction now. And so it's just put that up against where we are, and you'll see how important this like nice solid win rate is. And guard, and also put this against like our historical performance. Like guard have been just in the zone since the beginning of 10th. We have never dropped, never say never. We have very, 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 very rarely dropped below a 40% win rate. And every so often, we peak our heads into 53%. That's where we peak our heads. Okay? Like, but typically guard hover around 45% win rate. With 3%, sometimes we go 3% above, sometimes we go 3% below. But typically we hover around 45% win rate. Now, what is interesting to me here is I think things have changed slightly yet significantly. More often than not, I see us hovering around a high 40% win rate. Not a low 40, not a mid 40 like we used to, but a high 40% win rate. You know, more often than, I would say the new guard average, and I'm not just saying that because it's here, but I mean like in general, you know, wherever the fluctuations go, I would say the new guard average is 48%, and us going 3% above that or 3% below that as the average, as the weekly fluctuations. And I think that represents a couple of factors. I think that represents the impact of the points changes we've been having, which have overall been positive. I think that represents the experience starting to come through. You have to understand that at the beginning of 10th edition, we had a huge amount of inexperienced guard players who had jumped on the faction end of 9th edition with the range refresh and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's taken those motherfuckers like a year and a half to build up their collections and then get their experience in with them. So we're starting to see like the sort of the hobby journey begin to mature for a lot of people's collections, a lot of people's experience. But overall, I just think it just shows that guard have got a little bit better. both, you know, on every level, Guard have got a little bit better. And considering, like, let's just take a moment now to look around, look at the big picture, zoom out from the Guard meta and zoom out from the isolation, and zoom out and look at the big picture here. So many different factions which have come and gone. Factions which were top dog are now bottom. Factions which were bottom are now top. And yet, Guard have just been so damn consistent since the beginning of the edition. We've just been in that mid 40s, now, you know, sort of high 40s. We've just been in that sort of that mid 40s pocket. And it's just, for me, on a personal level, despite things have fluctuated a lot, and that's fluctuated for Guard, that core stability has been very, very refreshing. And yeah, the meta has changed a lot. Mechanized is now hot, artillery is now off. Don't get me wrong, it's changed a lot. But that sort of just fundamental stability of the faction has been very calming, and has been I can't overstate how important that has been to me, as sort, you know, to avoid like getting burned out. And I've said it before, that comes down to how fundamentally strong I think most of the data sheets are. So, in summary, not much. There's a lot of waffle for me to basically say. Not a lot has changed for Guard. Okay, not a lot has changed. Like, our internal meta has definitely gone through a bit of fluctuations, but this week not a lot has changed. But in a week where things are in a meta where things are literally in flux every weekend, having a faction that is just steady as she goes, that in itself I find to be a remarkable point that is worth noting and observing. Will it remain that way? We can only hope. There will always be fluctuation, but I feel like Guard is in a very, very steady place right now. Yeah. As Azuth has said, turns out they're not only the Empress finest, they're the Empress most consistent. There you go. There you go. So after Guard, we've got some shit factions. We've got Necrons. For the first time in months. So Necrons doing fine, by the way. 48% win rate versus an average 50%. 6 players going 4-1. 3 people actually winning tournaments. So Necrons showing they still absolutely have what it takes to win tournaments. 48 players makes them incredibly popular. Canoptic Core now basically, even though it's got a good win rate, no one's playing it. One dude forgot the memo and took Get Annihilated Legion. Awakened Dynasty still as the second fiddle, but Hypercrypt Legion basically still dominating. Awakened Dynasty is for, like, if you want a bit of a palate cleanser with your Necrons. Hypercrypt Legion is like, okay, I'm ready to start playing seriously again now. Now, the thing is, with the Necron tournaments that they won the smallest event and the second smallest event of the weekend. But they also did quite well. Where is it? And they won a major. They won a major. So they won two small events. I won't say very small. They won 2 small events, and they won a major. For me, it's not about the number of wins. It's about where those wins are coming in. And to me, this shows that Necrons are still a phenomenally powerful faction. Not only have they still got after all the nerfs, a very good player number, still got a very good 4-1 or higher rate, but the thing is, they are winning tournaments of all sizes. So Necrons are still one of the top factions. They may look like the middle of the pack, but the potential that they have is very, very, very strong. Imperial Knights, the gatekeepers. Look at that. 23 players, 50% win rate, average of 50%, 1 person going 4-1. But basically, you take Imperial Knights, you're either going 2-3, 3-2. It's that simple. Imperial Knights are the gatekeepers. Thousand Suns, a surprise to see them this low down, but it's still a great result for them. Like, it's like a relatively low position, right? 50% against an average 53%, but when you peel the layers back, 5 people out of 26, so roughly 20% of their players were able to go 4-1. and someone won a motherfucking tournament with them. Thousand Suns are still running around, double doom bolting everyone off the table, and just generally causing a lot of pain. And they won a normal size GT 44 player 5 round. So yeah, Thousand Suns, same shit. What'll be interesting to see with Thousand Suns is if the win rate changes at all now that they can no longer use indirect fire flamers and cabal points. So that could, as Mad Larkin says, that could that could be some significant punch that they have lost. Black Templars recovering a little bit. Last week they were down low a little bit. But they've recovered. 51% win rate versus an average of 50%. 3 people going 4 and 1, but no tournament wins. But you don't really see a lot of Black Templar tournament wins these days. Like once every so often, someone manages to pull it off. But they're a 4 and 1 faction now. Great numbers though. Similar numbers to Guard there. 25 people running Black Templars. So either that represents a lot more Black Templars coming out to play, or it represents a little bit lower Guard players coming out. The vast majority of the Black Templar players are on Righteous Crusade, with the occasional 1 to 3 players running something a bit different. I know some of these look really, really high, like it does a win rate, but you have to remember that it's like one dude that happened to go 4 and 2, or 3 and 2. Still impressive, but not enough to draw any meaningful data from. This 3 player taking Gladius and it having a 50% win rate and someone going 4 and 1 with it, that tickles my fancy. I would have thought that Dark Angels were the better Gladius attachment, but we're seeing some interesting, consistently good results from Black Templar Gladius. One to watch. I still don't think anything will knock the Righteous Crusade from the most popular Templar attachment just because of the fluff. The fluff players, the diehard players. But seeing Gladius bare its fangs is interesting. Eldar! Bunch of pointy-eared bastards. How many times does one faction need to be nerfed before they get the fucking message? Eldar having a great weekend. Great weekend. 53% win rate, giving is 5% above the average. That is a big jump up. And 8 people going 4 and 1. So no tournament wins, but 8 people out of 37. What is that like? That's that's like 25%. Roughly. Maybe like 23%, 20%. That is a really high number of people that actually were able to get those wins in. And a really high number of players for a faction. Like, Eldar, there's not normally more Eldar players than Guard players these days after all the nerfs, but Eldar had a really, really good weekend. It'll remain to see whether it's a one-off or whether the goddamn Knife Ears have found another broken build. Eldar took a lot of blows. Took a lot of nerfs. And for a long time, they kind of dipped down into the middle of the pack. We've seen a few times when they've pulled themselves up into from the middle into the top half. I wonder if they'll keep pulling themselves up. That's the biggie. Could be a blip. I'm not getting too worried about Eldar just yet. But if there's any faction that can make a comeback and start influencing the meta again, it will be the Eldar. World Eaters. World Eaters coming in with a 53% win rate. World Eaters are one of the factions that is very much in the ascendancy. Very much one of the factions to watch right now. 34 players is phenomenal player numbers for this faction. 7 people going 4 and 1. That's about 20%. And 1 person actually winning a tournament. What did they win? Big or little? Big or little? What? Looking big. It's looking like it could be big. What did they win? They won a 76 player event in China. All right, China will grow stronger. Apparently, China will grow angrier with all of the berserkers there. World Eaters They are a solid 4-on-1 faction. Like, they will go in and just bulldoze down 4 factions. The problem is that they are going to encounter someone that just flattens them, that they just laminate themselves against. But if they get a good run and they don't encounter that, they can go all the way. Yeah, World Eaters are one of the stronger factions right now. They're a little one-dimensional. They're not necessarily super major winning consistently, but on a good run, they will go all the way. They have that potential. Chaos Demons, basically what I said about World Eaters now applies to Chaos Demons, to the point like where they're all using like Corn Demons and stuff now. Bloodthirsters, great. Bloodletters, great. Monocorn, great. Pretty much everything about World Eaters and Chaos Demons, like it's in the meta, is very, very similar these days. World Eaters run at you a bit faster. Chaos Demons deep strike closer to you, but they are running at you, they're chopping you up, and it's a lot of corn shit happening as well. And you can see, look at the similarities in these two factions. 53%, 53%, 52%, 53%, 8 players versus 7 players going 4-on-1. Same number of players. Yeah. So, Chaos Demons really, and World Eaters really finding success in both doing similar tactics. Tell you one Chaos faction that's that's had a good week though, and I mean, Chaos Demons and World Eaters both had very good weeks, don't get me wrong, but a faction that had a better, but those factions are in the ascendancy. A Chaos faction that had a better than average week, the Death Guard. Death Guard have been bubbling. They've been simmering for a little while now, and I very much expect that they'll be back down into the high 40s again. It's a little bit of a blip, a little bit of just a good week, but I think that they are bubbling, and I think they are simmering, and I think they're cooking. Let them cook. Let them cook. And I think what this week might be is us seeing Death Guard starting to start for the stew to be ready. I don't know what. I'm very hungry all of a sudden. I want some food. I want some homemade stew, boys. We're seeing Death Guard. I think we're starting to see some culmination of some things. 53% win rate versus a 48% win rate is very good. Having many players, having 7 players go 4-1 is very good. Having decent player numbers with 30 player numbers, all of this shows ironically, a healthy faction. The Death Guard meta specifically, it's about them Death Shrouds. Yeah. So you're seeing a lot of people move away from Morty and Plagueburst Crawlers because they're just not working anymore. And what we're starting to see, one thing that Death Guard players are starting to discover about their faction, one of the things that I've seen people talking about with the faction, is that they actually have a lot of cheap shit for doing objectives. Now, Death Guard have always had this cheap shit for doing objectives. But I think up until this moment, they've been kind of blinded, kind of blinkered. And the recent changes have kind of forced them to see through the lies of the Jedi. So when you're spending like almost half your points on 3 Plagueburst Crawlers and Morty, you don't really have a lot of points left over in your list for the other shit that you want. When that stuff becomes less attractive, you realize how points efficient Death Guard can be, and you realize how much you can cram into a Death Guard list if you want to. And I think that's what the Death Guard players are discovering, and they're like, oh, I've got Poxwalkers, they can do this. Oh, I've got Plague Marines, they can do this. It's not all that like fucking random shitty nurgling squads. Oh, I've got cultists and stuff like that. So I think what Death Guard are discovering is that if they don't spunk all of their points on this one indirect fire wombo combo, they can get a lot of good shit, a lot of efficient shit, and a lot of stuff for doing objectives. And they can still retain some durability and some killing power in their units as well. So Death Guard, they're finally listening. They're finally listening to Stephen Box. They're finally digging in to all of them tools in that toolbox. Beef! Beef! Grey Knights! Ugh. This is my natural reaction to a faction. Doesn't have to kill anything because you can score 95 fucking points. Grey Knights are a really, really, really competitive faction right now. Problem with Grey Knights is phenomenally boring. It's just, there's nothing new to talk about Grey Knights. There has been nothing really new to talk about Grey Knights since the beginning of 10th edition. They just play the mission. And it's really annoying because I feel like I'm not allowed to get angry at Grey Knights for just playing the mission. Because that's the whole fucking point, right? Play the mission, win the game. Yeah, of course. Of course. But I would quite like to just have... Sometimes it's quite fun to have a bit of a scrap. And when your faction isn't scrappy, feels kind of dull. So Grey Knights can play the mission phenomenally well. They've got loads of tools. They've got Dread Knights, they've got Terminators, they've got Drago, they've got Strike Marines, they've got loads of units on the list. But they won't fight you if they don't have to. Some missions, they literally, if you see a Grey Knight unit, you're lucky. So of course we'll talk, of course there will be games where they get stuck in. Of course. But Grey Knights can just choose to play the mission and be like, you will never get this, you will never get this. And the trick is to be like, I'm going to get this, basically. Just what I want to see from these guys is a bit of interactivity. I hope that the auto malice attachment will change things for them. Now, where are we right now? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're in the we're actually the top 8, boys. So who's in the top 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So World Eaters, Chaos Demons, and Death Guard all being the top 8. It's the hot summer of chaos. It is the hot summer of chaos. 3 chaos factions in the top 8. That's a pretty big deal. Now, the last faction in the top 8 before we get to the top 3 is Sisters of Battle. Now, Sisters of Battle are like one of the top factions right now. Bringers of the Flame is incredible. And the evidence now that the evidence for this is not only are they in the top 8, they're in the top 5. In fact, they're the 4th best factions this weekend with a 53% win rate versus an average of 54% win rate. They had 7 players go 4-1, 1 person won a tournament. The big thing is 52 players. Sisters of Battle were the most played faction this weekend. There were more people playing Sisters than Necrons. That is a huge jump up. They've been like on 20 to 30 players forever, and they're now just straight up. So and considering that they're a very powerful faction, what you're seeing is a lot of mirror matches. So this isn't 53% win, isn't a 53% win rate. It's probably close to 58% win rate. Godlike Poet, that is big. I remember we did single digits. Exactly, man. Exactly. So Sisters of Battle, that is a huge explosion of numbers. That right there is the indication of they be broken. They be broken as shit. And it is not equally distributed. Out of the 52 players, 10 people took Army of Faith or Hallowed Martyrs, and 42 took Bringers of Flame. So really, this is a 58% win rate for... This win rate here is being dragged down by Hallowed Martyrs having a 17% win rate this week. Really, this is a 58% win rate. And really, it's not a 58% win rate because you've got the mirror match. That's a 60-something% win rate. That is a faction with a 58% win rate that is being hard artificially suppressed. That's a 60+% win rate. There's no way of putting it. All of the punch is here. All the punch. If you are collecting Sisters right now, if you are playing Brings of the Flame, truly enjoy it whilst you can. And I'm not saying that sarcastic way or in a horrible or vindictive way. Truly enjoy it whilst you can, because they're going to come for you. They're going to come for you like they came for Orcs, man. And Orcs are bottom of the table this week. So enjoy it whilst you can. And when it's over, don't be salty, because anyone with half a brain cell can fucking see where this is going. Okay? There we go. Sisters are the new top faction. The Leagues of Cheese. We have got the Leagues of Votann, who have been on a bit of a warpath. 54% win rate versus a 50% average with 6 players out of 22 going 4-1. That's weird. Like, what? Why? Like 2 weeks, was it 2 weeks ago? They were in like the bottom 3, and now they're in the top 3. Votan are all over the place right now. But the player numbers are okay. The win rate's okay. It's a lot of people going 4-1. I wonder if something has happened with Pariah Nexus, where at first the Votan team didn't, Votan community was like struggling to like adapt to it. Now they have adapted. They might have some really good tools for that. Wow. Yeah. I did not have on my bingo card Leagues of Votan being a top 3 faction. I think, if I'm going to be honest, I suspect that this is like the pendulum swinging. I think they were in the bottom 3 a couple of weeks ago. Now in the top 3. I think it's going to go back to the middle. Leagues of Votan, as far as I'm aware, aren't doing anything particularly different. But that doesn't, just because the faction doesn't have any new data sheets and the points haven't changed much, and they're still running basically the same list. Maybe there's a few hackathons, maybe there's not. I suspect that maybe it's not that Votan have changed, it's that Pariah Nexus has changed. Votan, as Mad Larkin has said, they can break small, they break big squads down to small squads, and that is very, very potent. It allows you to get a lot of secondary potential. But hey, Tactical Marines can do that, so that's kind of interesting. Now, yeah, Leagues of Votan, one to watch. Very, very impressive results. If they're in the top 8 next week, then we need to delve into this and find out what's going on. I'm putting this under blip for now, but a blip with keep an eye on it. And then we get to Drukari. Come on. Motherfuckers have got a 56% win rate. Motherfuckers had 16% of their players go 4-1. And one person won a tournament. And it wasn't like it was a small tournament, guys. It was the biggest fucking tournament of the weekend. It was a goddamn super major. So come on, Art of War. Yes, I agree with you that the data can be really fucked up. And yes, I agree with you that there's lies, damn lies, statistics. But can we agree? Can we agree that Dark Elder are not a bottom 8 faction? I'm not saying you have to say they're a top faction. Then we can all agree they're not a bottom 8 faction. Now, again, that everything I've said there is also jokey beef. Like, Art of War, let's be real here. They know a lot more about this game than I do. They play in a lot more tournaments than I do. And when they go to the tournaments, they tend to do a lot better than I do. Like, I've never been in contention to ever win a fucking super major. I probably never will be in contention to ever win a super major. Because I'm just a bit... Well, I'm just not as good a player as them. Okay, let's be real here. You know, let's make sure we're not blowing things out of proportion. But looking at Drukari here, clearly though, they are a very strong faction, and the simple matter of the fact is that it comes down to multiple small units in boats, and it comes down to the thing that Dark Elder have always been good at doing: addition in, addition out, and that's trading well. Dark Elder units have always been a glass hammer. They've always, okay, regardless, not the beginning of 10th edition, to be fair, but we're talking in generalizations here, we're not talking in specifics. As a general rule, Dark Elder have always been one of those factions that hits like a fucking truck. But they're incredibly fragile. As a result, they tend to be massively undercosted for the potential damage output they can do. And it's always been it's been a very hard balancing act for GW, because on the one hand, you don't want to make something that can reliably die to mass lasgun fire costs like 300-400 points, because it's going to die to the shittest gun in the game. How do you balance that? How do you balance a faction which can kill the hardest shit in the game, but can die to the weakest shit in the game. It's hard, right? And so Drukari, you know, they've always been a bit of a difficult faction for GW to balance. But the thing is, right now, what they are doing, why are Dark Elder suddenly doing so well? It comes down to a number of factors. Firstly, they are the quintessential MSU unit. Okay, they are the quintessential MSU unit. And we have just entered a season of actions. Like, more so than Leviathan, we've entered a season of actions. We've also entered a season of like battle line being relevant. Dark Elder, like warriors, they're not a bad battle line choice. We've got a few other things that can do battle line. I don't know if it's just warriors, but anyway, point is, we're in an era of multiple small units and objectives, and Dark Elder do multiple small units and they do objectives. They also trade incredibly well, which is very good generally. But specifically, one of the big things that's changed around Dark Elder is indirect fire. Pretty much, indirect fire is pretty much dead in the game. Like, it's not dead. It's like still twitching a bit. Like, there's still some factions that make use of it, like Guard. Our indirect fire is still pretty meaningful. But for the vast majority of people, indirect fire is gone, and the new thing that people are doing is pseudo indirect fire, or counts as indirect fire, and that is combat, so charging through ruins, and that is deep striking. Now, the problem with both of those options is it doesn't get around the issue. It doesn't get around the strength that Dark Elder are putting out right now, which is the thing that's actually winning the games is inside the transport. The transport is the catalyst, but the thing that's inside the transport is winning the game. So if you charge the Raider or the Venom, whatever the fuck they use these days, if you charge the Raider, yes, you are going to kill the Raider. But then your turn is going to end, and then we're going to go to the Dark Elder, who are going to countercharge you and kill you. Likewise, if you deep strike down, if you bear in mind, Dark Elder can absolutely screen the fuck out of stuff because they've got loads and loads and loads of small boats. If you do manage to deep strike down a unit in a position where you can get an angle on one of these boats, which is not 100% possible, but if you do, you're probably going to get one unit to do it. One unit per angle, should we say. There might be several angles, but one unit per angle. So again, what happens is you kill the transport with your Giga Blob of Scions, but then the thing that is actually going to kill you is it just pops out. So then what happens is that thing comes and kills you. And because of how many boats these guys can throw down, it's hard. So ironically, what the number one thing that has paved the way for Dark Elder to be good, the number one thing that's paved the way Sky Splinter Assault to do very well, is actually is artillery being nerfed. So the reason why this is ironic and the reason why this is important is because indirect fire is a mechanic that is often derided. Like me and my painting abilities, it is a lot of shit is often thrown at it, unjustly thrown at it. And the what people fail to realize is that indirect fire is an important part of the ecosystem. Now, am I saying indirect fire has always been perfectly implemented? No, there's always been times when indirect fire has been overtuned. Tau have done it. Guard have done it. There's been Marines have done it. There's always been times when indirect fire has been overtuned. But indirect fire is a very, very important part of the ecosystem because it keeps certain things in check. So it keeps certain factions honest. And there's a reason why we have started to see assault armies really starting to go into the ascendancy. The reason why we've seen things like World Eaters and Chaos Demons starting to really start to do well, because they can stage And if you don't have any indirect fire, you can't stop them. And so so what they do is they stage, and the next one they fuck you. Now, if everyone's got a bit of indirect fire, it becomes not impossible, but it becomes harder for that staging to take place. It can force the combat armies to maybe move to have a go turn a bit earlier than when they're fully ready. It's an important counter, and when that counter's taken away, you have armies that can just stage and fuck. Now, on top of that, it also keeps factions like Eldar and Grey Knights honest as well. Eldar, what do? They jump out, they fuck you, they jump back. Well, they can't do that if you just shell them. Grey Knights, they're just going to sit and play the mission. They can't do that if you're bombarding them. Drukari, they're just gonna jump out of boats and jump back in. They can't do that if you have indirect fire. So the reason why, and what's interesting is people deride indirect fire as being like, it's like uninteractive. You can't interact with it. I don't know if it's just me and my guard bias, and it very well may be, and I will hold my hands up and accept this. But personally, I think what has always been way more frustrating than artillery, going back to fucking 3rd edition, is jump, shoot, jump, and its equivalent. And that's what Dark Eldar are doing, that's what Grey Knights are doing, and that's what Eldar are doing. And in my personal opinion, these are the 3 least fun factions to play into right now. Dark Eldar, jump out, kill you, jump back. Grey Knights, teleport forward, you go near them, they teleport away. Or you shoot them, they teleport away. Eldar, they can do fan. They've been jumps in the beginning of the edition. We need artillery, because if you don't have indirect fire, it's just going to be a very unfun game. I played the tournament recently, this weekend gone. I did the tournament report on it. One of the least fun games I have ever had, and it was no shade of my opponent. The least fun game that I've had in all of 10th edition was against Grey Knights, where my opponent just hid the entire game. And because I didn't have an indirect fire, I couldn't do anything about it. Me and Simon have been doing battle reports recently as well. And one of the things that we've both said we're really not liking about Grey Knights is that you are encouraged to just hide. Like, obviously, Simon is kind of salty naturally. But, a lot of that, he's not that salty. He's actually he's actually a really, really nice guy. But, when Simon and I have been talking about certain stuff, like off camera, like, how the game's going, like, blah, 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 because there's a lot of stuff that we chat about off camera. One of the things we've both said is he has expressed an intense frustration at just being like, well, I can't do anything in this game, because if I come out, you just kill me. So I'm just going to hide and score points. And it's like, that's not really fun. And now for some players who are using armies like that, that feels very tactical and very fun, and they're enjoying that. But for a lot of players, both into it and playing with it, it's not very fun at all. So Drukari are an example of why indirect fire is an incredibly important mechanic, and that it gets way more shit than it should do. It's kind of like spiders. No one likes spiders. See a spider in your house, your missus screams at you to fucking kill it, and you don't. It's like, it's not even doing any harm. He's fucking sitting there, bro, up there killing a bunch of flies. But no, you have to kill it. Spider bro. How many times have spider bros been unjustly killed because we don't like them? But the truth of the matter is that they don't harm us. Okay, I'm speaking about spiders in the UK here. Spiders in like Australia will fucking kill you and do need to die. But like, how many times has like a totally harmless spider been killed? But actually, because people just don't like them. When actually, it's doing a very important job for the ecosystem. Indirect fire is the spiders of Warhammer. And Drukari right now are running amok because we don't have any spiders. Last faction, top faction, Space Wolves. Hey! Space Wolves, there's not a huge amount to report here. There's just some individually interesting stats. Space Wolves, 58% win rate. Is a big jump up from their 53% win rate. They actually smashed it this week with almost a third of their players going 4-1 or better. 2 people actually won tournaments, and they had 24 players, which is pretty good numbers for them. Stormlands has stormed back onto the scene. Really, really impressive. And Champions of Rust also has come in as a worthy second detachment, if you want to mix things up a little bit. One poor bastard thought that Gladius could work for any Marine and found out the hard way that it's basically for Dark Angels. Let's have a look at what the Space Wolves have won, if it's big or little. Looks pretty big. 53-player event. And a 64-player event. So two big tournaments. So it looks like after a slight dip, Space Wolves are back on top. I don't think they're doing anything that's particularly new or nuanced. Well, you know, Stormlance is still going to be Thunderwolves. Champions of Rust is still going to be doing its thing. But it looks like Stormlance is having a good week. And there was a hope. I had a hope that Space Wolves were going to be slightly humbled with Piranha Nexus. It seems like they took a month off and now they're back on there. Could be a blip, but having a 58% blip is pretty impressive. And not being Deathwatch like one dude. Like it's a proper up. It's not a blip. So yeah, blip but watch, I would say. I still think Space Wolves are a top, at least on this set of data, are a top. As in like Meta Monday and that weekly. I think they're still probably a top half faction. They're going to go up and down a bit. They might even be a top 8 faction, but they've still got teeth, which is good for Space Wolves, I suppose. And that, gentlemen, just about covers it all. But yeah, that's about it, guys. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's stream. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.